This is a continuation of All Quiet on the Western Front by Remarque, comprising the first part of Chapter 9. Chapter 9. We travel for several days. The first aeroplanes appear in the sky. We roll on past transport lines. Guns, guns. The light railway picks us up. I search for my regiment. No one knows exactly where it lies. Somewhere or other I put up for the night. Somewhere or other I receive provisions and a few vague instructions. And so with my pack and my rifle, I set out again on the way. By the time I come up, they are no longer in the devastated place. I hear we have become one of the flying divisions that are pushed in wherever it is hottest. That does not sound cheerful to me. They tell me of heavy losses that we have been having. I inquire after Kat and Albert. No one knows anything of them. I search farther and wander about here and there. It is a strange feeling. One night more and then another I camp out like a red Indian. Then at last I get some definite information, and by the afternoon I am able to report to the orderly room. The sergeant major detains me there. The company comes back in 2 days' time. There is no object in sending me up now. What was it like on leave? He asks. Pretty good, eh? In parts, I say. Yes, he sighs. Yes, if a man didn't have to come away again. The second half is always rather messed up by that. I loaf around until the company comes back in the early morning, gray, dirty, soured, and gloomy. Then I jump up, push in amongst them, my eyes searching. There is Chayden, there is Muller blowing his nose, and there are Kat and Crop. We arrange our sacks of straw side by side. I have an uneasy conscience when I look at them, and yet without any good reason. Before we turn in, I bring out the rest of the potato cakes and jam so that they can have some too. The outer cakes are moldy, still it is possible to eat them. I keep those for myself and give the fresh ones to Kat and Crop. Kat chews and says, "These are from your mother?" I nod. "Good," says he. "I can tell by the taste." I could almost weep. I can hardly control myself any longer. But it will soon be all right again back here with Kat and Albert. This is where I belong. "You've been lucky," whispers Crop to me before we drop off to sleep. "They say we are going to Russia." To Russia? It's not much of a war over there. In the distance, the front thunders. The walls of the hut rattle. There's a great deal of polishing being done. We are inspected at every turn. Everything that is torn is exchanged for new. I score a spotless new tunic out of it, and Kat, of course, an entire outfit. A rumor is going round that there may be peace, but the other story is more likely, that we are bound for Russia. Still, what do we need new things for in Russia? At last it leaks out. The Kaiser is coming to review us. Hence all the inspections. For 8 whole days one would suppose we were in a base camp. There is so much drill and fuss. Everyone is peevish and touchy. We do not take kindly to all this polishing, much less to the full dress parades. Such things exasperate a soldier more than the front line. At last the moment arrives. We stand to attention, and the Kaiser appears. We are curious to see what he looks like. He stalks along the line, and I am really rather disappointed. Judging from his pictures, I imagined him to be bigger and more powerfully built, and above all to have a thundering voice. He distributes iron crosses, speaks to this man and that. Then we march off. Afterwards we discuss it. Jodin says with astonishment, "So that is the all-highest, and everyone, bar nobody, has to stand up stiff in front of him." He meditates. "Hindenburg, too, he has to stand up stiff to him, eh?" "Sure," says Kat. Chayden hasn't finished yet. He thinks for a while, and then asks, "And would a king have to stand up stiff to an emperor?" None of us is quite sure about it, but we don't suppose so. They are both so exalted that standing strictly to attention is probably not insisted on. "What rot you do hatch out," says Kat. "The main point is that you have to stand stiff yourself." But Chayden is quite fascinated. His otherwise prosy fancy is blowing bubbles. "But look," he announces, "I simply can't believe that an emperor has to go to the latrine the same as I have." "You can bet your boots on it." 4.5 wit makes 7, says Kat. "You've got a maggot in your brain, Chayden. Just you run along to the latrine quick and get your head clear, so that you don't talk like a 2-year-old. Chayden disappears. "But what I would like to know," says Albert, "is whether there would not have been a war if the Kaiser had said no." I'm sure there would, I interject. He was against it from the first. Well, if not him alone, then perhaps if 20 or 30 people in the world had said no. That's probable, I agree. But they damned well said yes. It's queer when one thinks about it, goes on Krop. We are here to protect our fatherland, and the French are over there to protect their fatherland. Now who's in the right? Perhaps both, say I without believing it. Yes, well now, pursues Albert, and I see that he means to drive me into a corner. But our professors and parsons and newspapers say that we are the only ones that are right, and let's hope so. But the French professors and parsons and newspapers say that the right is on their side. Now what about that? That I don't know, I say. But whichever way it is, there's war all the same, and every month more countries coming in. Jaden reappears. He is still quite excited and again joins the conversation, wondering just how a war gets started. Mostly by one country badly offending another, answers Albert with a slight air of superiority. Then Jaden pretends to be obtuse. A country? I don't follow. A mountain in Germany cannot offend a mountain in France, or a river, or a wood, or a field of wheat. Are you really as stupid as that, or are you just pulling my leg? Growls Krop. I don't mean that at all. One people offends the other. Then I haven't any business here at all, replies Tijadin. I don't feel myself offended. Well, let me tell you, says Albert sourly. It doesn't apply to tramps like you. Then I can be going home right away, retorts Jaden, and we all laugh. Ach, man, he means the people as a whole, the state, exclaims Miller. State. Tijadin snaps his fingers contemptuously. Gendarmes, police, taxes, that's your state. If that's what you are talking about, no, thank you. That's right, says Kat. You've said something for once, Tijadin. State and home country, there's a big difference. But they go together, insists Krop. Without the state, there wouldn't be any home country. True, but just you consider, almost all of us are simple folk. And in France, too, the majority of men are laborers, workmen, or poor clerks. Now just why would a French blacksmith or a French shoemaker want to attack us? No, it is merely the rulers. I had never seen a Frenchman before I came here, and it will be just the same with the majority of Frenchmen as regards us. They weren't asked about it any more than we were. Then what exactly is the war for? Asks Jaden. Kat shrugs his shoulders. There must be some people to whom the war is useful. Well, I'm not one of them, grins Jaden. Not you, nor anybody else here. Who are they then? Persists Jaden. It isn't any use to the Kaiser either. He has everything he can want already. I'm not so sure about that, contradicts Kat. He has not had a war up till now. And every full-grown emperor requires at least one war, otherwise he would not become famous. You look in your school books. And generals too, adds Dietering. They become famous through war. Even more famous than emperors, adds Kat. There are other people back behind there who profit by the war, that's certain, growls Dietering. I think it is more of a kind of fever, says Albert. No one in particular wants it, and then all at once there it is. We didn't want the war, the others say the same thing, and yet half the world is in it all the same. But there are more lies told by the other side than by us, say I. Just think of those pamphlets the prisoners have on them, where it says that we eat Belgian children. The fellows who write those lies ought to go and hang themselves. They are the real culprits. Miller gets up. Anyway, it is better that the war is here instead of in Germany. Just you look at the shell holes. True, assents Jaden, but no war at all would be better still. He is quite proud of himself because he has scored for once over us volunteers. And his opinion is quite typical. Here one meets it time and again, and there is nothing with which one can properly counter it, because that is the limit of their comprehension of the factors involved. The national feeling of the Tommy resolves itself into this. Here he is. But that is the end of it. Everything else he criticizes from his own practical point of view. Albert lies down on the grass and growls angrily. The best thing is not to talk about the rotten business. It won't make any difference, that's sure, agrees Kat. To make matters worse, we have to return almost all the new things and take back our old rags again. The good ones were merely for the inspection. Instead of going to Russia, we go up the line again. On the way, we pass through a devastated wood with the tree trunks shattered and the ground plowed up. At several places there are tremendous craters. Great guns, something's hit that, I say to Cat. Trench mortars, he replies, and then points up at one of the trees. In the branches, dead men are hanging. A naked soldier is squatting in the fork of a tree. He still has his helmet on, otherwise he is entirely unclad. There is only half of him sitting up there, the top half. The legs are missing. What can that mean? I ask. He's been blown out of his clothes, mutters Chayden. It's funny, says Cat. We have seen that several times now. If a mortar gets you, it blows you clean out of your clothes. It's the concussion that does it. I search around, and so it is. Here hang bits of uniform, and somewhere else is plastered a bloody mess that was once a human limb. Over there lies a body with nothing but a piece of the underpants on one leg, and the collar of the tunic around its neck. Otherwise, it is naked, and the clothes are hanging up in the tree. Both arms are missing as though they had been pulled out. I discover one of them 20 yards off in a shrub. The dead man lies on his face. There, where the arm wounds are, the earth is black with blood. Underfoot, the leaves are scratched up as though the man had been kicking. That's no joke, Cat, say I. No more is a shell splinter in the belly, he replies, shrugging his shoulders. But don't get tender-hearted, says Chayden. All this can only have happened a little while ago. The blood is still fresh. As everybody we see there is dead, we do not waste any more time, but report the affair at the next stretcher-bearer's post. After all, it is not our business to take these stretcher-bearers' jobs away from them. A patrol has to be sent out to discover just how strongly the enemy position is manned. Since my leave, I feel a certain strange attachment to the other fellows, and so I volunteer to go with them. We agree on a plan, slip out through the wire, and then divide and creep forward separately. After a while, I find a shallow shell hole and crawl into it. From here, I peer forward. There is moderate machine gun fire. It sweeps across from all directions, not very heavy, but always sufficient to make one keep down. A parachute star shell opens out. The ground lies stark in the pale light, and then the darkness shuts down again, blacker than ever. In the trenches, we were told there were black troops in front of us. That is nasty. It is hard to see them. They are very good at patrolling, too. And oddly enough, they are often quite stupid. For instance, both Cat and Crop were once able to shoot down a black enemy patrol, because the fellows in their enthusiasm for cigarettes smoked while they were creeping about. Cat and Albert had simply to aim at the glowing ends of the cigarettes. A bomb or something lands close beside me. I have not heard it coming and am terrified. At the same moment, a senseless fear takes hold of me. Here I am alone and almost helpless in the dark. Perhaps 2 other eyes have been watching me for a long while from another shell hole in front of me, and a bomb lies ready to blow me to pieces. I try to pull myself together. It is not my first patrol, and not a particularly risky one. But it is the first since my leave. And besides, the lie of the land is still rather strange to me. I tell myself that my alarm is absurd, that there is probably nothing at all there in the darkness watching me. Otherwise they would not be firing so low. It is in vain. In whirling confusion, my thoughts hum in my brain. I hear the warning voice of my mother. I see the Russians with the flowing beards leaning against the wire fence. I have a bright picture of a canteen with stools, of a cinema in Valenciennes, tormented, terrified. In my imagination, I see the gray, implacable muzzle of a rifle which moves noiselessly before me whichever way I try to turn my head. The sweat breaks out from every pore. I still continue to lie in the shallow bowl. I look at the time. Only a few minutes have passed. My forehead is wet. The sockets of my eyes are damp, my hands tremble, and I am panting softly. It is nothing but an awful spasm of fear, a simple animal fear of poking out my head and crawling on farther. All my efforts subside like froth into the one desire to be able just to stay lying there. My limbs are glued to the earth. I make a vain attempt. They refuse to come away. I press myself down on the earth. I cannot go forward. I make up my mind to stay lying there. But immediately the wave floods over me anew, a mingled sense of shame, of remorse, and yet at the same time of security. I raise myself up a little to take a look round. My eyes burn with staring into the dark. A star shell goes up. I duck down again. I wage a wild and senseless fight. I want to get out of the hollow and yet slide back into it again. I say, you must. It is your comrades. It is not an idiotic command. And again, what does it matter to me? I have only one life to lose. That is the result of all this leave, I plead in extenuation. But I cannot reassure myself. I become terribly faint. I raise myself slowly and reach forward with my arms, dragging my body after me, and then lie on the edge of the shell. Whole, half in and half out. There I hear sounds and drop back. Suspicious sounds can be detected clearly despite the noise of the artillery fire. I listen. The sound is behind me. They are our people moving along the trench. Now I hear muffled voices, to judge by the tone that might be cat talking. At once a new warmth flows through me. These voices, these quiet words, these footsteps in the trench behind me recall me at a bound from the terrible loneliness and fear of death by which I had been almost destroyed. They are more to me than life, these voices. They are more than motherliness, and more than fear. They are the strongest, most comforting thing there is anywhere. They are the voices of my comrades. I am no longer a shuddering speck of existence, alone in the darkness. I belong to them and they to me. We all share the same fear and the same life. We are nearer than lovers, in a simpler, a harder way. I could bury my face in them, in these voices, these words that have saved me, and will stand by me. Cautiously, I glide out over the edge and snake my way forward. I shuffle along on all fours a bit farther. I keep track of my bearings, look around me, and observe the distribution of the gunfire so as to be able to find my way back. Then I try to get in touch with the others. I am still afraid, but it is an intelligent fear, an extraordinarily heightened caution. The night is windy, and shadows flit hither and thither in the flicker of the gunfire. It reveals too little and too much. Often I pause, stock still, motionless, and always for nothing. Thus I advance a long way and then turn back in a wide curve. I have not established touch with the others. Every yard nearer our trench fills me with confidence, and with haste too. It would be bad to get hit now. Then a new fear lays hold of me. I can no longer remember the direction. Quiet, I squat in a shell hole and try to locate myself. More than once it has happened that some fellow has jumped joyfully into a trench, only then to discover that it was the wrong one. After a little time I listen again, but still I am not sure. The confusion of shell holes now seems so bewildering that I can no longer tell in my agitation which way I should go. Perhaps I am crawling parallel to the lines, and that might go on forever. So I crawl round once again in a wide curve. These damned rockets. They seem to burn for an hour, and a man cannot make the least movement without bringing the bullets whistling round. But there is nothing for it. I must get out. Falteringly, I work my way farther. I move off over the ground like a crab and rip my hands sorely on the jagged splinters, as sharp as razor blades. Often I think that the sky is becoming lighter on the horizon, but it may be merely my imagination. Then gradually I realize that to crawl in the right direction is a matter of life or death. This concludes the 11th part of 16 total of All Quiet on the Western Front by E.M. Remarque, produced by Best Audiobooks for free.